We're being scanned, sir.
We'll let them know our peaceful intention. Open hailing frequencies, Lieutenant Yar.
Frequencies open, sir.
On screen.
Hello.
Proceed.
Hello, my name is Allison Tiemann, and people are apparently listening to me on Apostasy Now.
I am Jean-Luc Picard, captain of the USS Enterprise. We come in peace.
Hello.
We're ready any time.
I'm Karen Strong, and Allison Tiemann and I are talking with Mr. Dragonbeard on Apostasy Now, right now.
Thank you.
I've created a monster.
You have.
I have.
You've done well. Something to write home about.
You made me do it, and then I did it, and then I liked it, and now I'll do it again.
We're ready any time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me do the non-sexy shill. Just Honey Badger Radio on YouTube.
Why do you reveal yourselves to us now?
You can go there and check us out.
Yeah, and also if you want to support our work, you can go to patreon.com/honeybadgerradio. So.
It's better when you do it sexy.
Pursuit course. Engage. Aye, sir.
Welcome back to Apostasy Now. This week, Fede A joins us, or as he'll allow you to call him Fred if you have trouble with that. He's an intellectual, he's a great guy. I've been following him for quite some time on his YouTube channel, which we will talk about quite a bit on the show, and we go through many topics that most people probably just try to avoid on an average day. I'll put the links to his YouTube in the show notes, and also I just figured I would let everyone know that we have a YouTube channel of our own now. Every other week, we're doing a roundtable, just having different guests on, talking about whatever we feel like. So that's Apostasy Now on YouTube. Additionally, you can look forward to having a number of great guests on the up and coming. We've got Michael Shermer going to be recording soon. I've already talked to Tom and Cecil, and I'm editing that right now from Cognitive Dissonance. A lot of good stuff going on. So check out the website to keep up. And welcome back. Let's get going with another episode of Apostasy Now.
Maybe there's something wrong in MRI I wouldn't pick up, if you know what I mean.
I'm not crazy. I just have another consciousness in my brain.
Because I'm very much a skeptic. I'm more of a skeptic than I am an atheist. I mean, atheist is a conclusion based on my skepticism.
So you'd be better if you were straight?
Yes.
Wow.
Anybody would be.
That attitude is what is responsible for the rise of atheism.
That's not what Islam is all about. Islam is peace.
What is the penalty for leaving the Muslim faith?
With the death penalty.
Thank you.
This is Apostasy Now.
For people to get the information correct before they start yapping.
Get ready to root for the bad guys.
Resist it while you still can, and before the right to complain is taken away from you, which will be the next thing.
All right, perfect.
All right. So now, how do you pronounce your name? What do you go by? Do you go by your channel name?
Yeah, you can just call me Fede, or you can call me Fred, if you will, as well.
So do you normally go by Fede, you said?
Yeah, or if it's more comfortable for you, you can just call me Fred.
I can handle Fede, if I'm saying that right, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Now, do I remember correctly from...
You go by Dragon, or...
You can call me Dragonbeard. My real name's Corey, some people call me that.
Yeah, sure, just Corey is fine.
Yeah. A little less mystical.
Exactly.
All right, how you doing?
I'm doing well, but besides that, I'm doing awesome. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm already going to drop my video out, just see if I can make sure that our audio stays up here. Let's see now.
All right.
All right, because that's going to be what matters most to the listeners.
Okay, sure.
I know we haven't talked before, but I've been watching your videos on and off. You've got very interesting conversations going on with people who are you're usually responding to something someone says.
Yeah, I don't take pride on that though. It's actually more admirable, if you will, to see people who come up with original ideas. I'm more of the responsive type of YouTuber, if you will.
Well, there's a place for it. Some people have some pretty undeveloped ideas.
I guess so. I just like to add to ideas or improve them, or maybe get my own mind changed. Wouldn't be the first time that someone changes my mind, for example, in this conversation, or that I change someone else's mind for that matter. So I think ultimately, that's what makes it worth it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you, everyone's got some labels they throw on themselves. Which are the ones you think of yourself? Do you consider yourself a skeptic, a philosopher?
Well, whenever someone says I consider myself a philosopher, I am a skeptic for sure. Maybe too much. I'm kind of cynical. So yeah, I am a skeptic. That's for sure. I'm very skeptic of a lot of things and people.
So, all right. Well, I've already watched some of your videos, but so I get a sense of this probably. But now, when you say you're a skeptic, generally up till very recently, and it's only like changing with sort of a very unpleasant conflict, it's assumed that you're a progressive.
Yeah. No, I'm not. So, by the way, do you mind if I grab something to eat meanwhile, or it's kind of...
No, that's fine. Yeah.
It's your podcast, man. You tell me the rules. It's fine.
That's absolutely fine.
All right. I'm gonna grab some. I got something to eat here, so But yeah, I'm not a progressive at all. Actually, I'm not a conservative either. It depends on what you talk about. If you tell me where do you stand in regards to social issues, I'd say probably left leaning. But in regards to economics, I'm right wing, I guess. So it really depends on what we are talking about.
I often kind of make fun of people for being stuck in the binary. You're either conservative or liberal to most people.
Everything is left or right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I call it bipolar.
Okay, let me put it like this. I'm for individualism and individual freedoms. Because of my own history, I guess, and because of, it makes sense as well. Actually, that one is even more important. It just makes sense, right? I mean, if you can't assure the individual is going to have the rights that he or she should have, then how do you expect society to work in the first place? I mean, the components of society are individuals, right? So if you are trembling upon inherent rights for individuals like freedom to offend, or freedom to defend yourself or defend your family, freedom to not be taxed, 60% of what you earn, etc., then how is society as a collective going to work? That's how I see it.
Right. Yep. Well, this is where the conflict often comes through is what we generally think of is left. They generally think of the greater good. And what we generally think of as right wing tends to be more focused on the individual. Not always, but that's often a conflict area.
Well, and it's not always like that. Exactly. You said not always. Like, for example, with regards to abortion, I would argue that the left is more individualist leaning, while the right is concerned about the collective lives of the children. I mean, they believe that they are children. So, let's say, gay marriage, right? So gay marriage, the left is more tending to consider the individual gay person who wants to get married. I mean, I think marriage itself is kind of a bad idea, although I am married, but not story. But the right, on the other hand, is considering, if you will, the fabric of society. I mean, that's a typical phrase they use.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not married to the right, although I do have to say that as of lately, the left has been, especially in North America, the left has been fucking retarded.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, I don't know if I can swear here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The whole, you offend my feelings. I mean, who cares?
Yeah, it's actually, okay, so for me going back a few years, only after Hitchens died did I actually get involved in what they generally call the atheist community.
Right.
And then as that happened, I became familiar with the skeptics community, and I sort of developed very quickly from there into my online life, listening to a lot of podcasts and YouTubers. And so I only started getting to know Hitchens after he died. And it's interesting, as I go through different stages, I go back and listen to him, And I begin to understand from a different perspective what he's talking about sometimes. Like, I knew that he was for invading Iraq, and I was never in favor of that. I still think it was a bad idea. But I'm beginning to understand in those arguments why he had such contempt for the things people were saying to him from the left. And he was brutal about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's the latest subject, actually, that I have changed changed my mind about Iraq in particular. Okay, so going to Iraq itself may have not been the worst idea ever, in the sense that Hussein was a liability, potentially, a great liability, like one of those, like, oh my God, why didn't we stop him earlier?
Yeah.
I think the mistake was to leave early. The mistake was to leave and just, if you will, think that people there were just gonna organize, peacefully. No, if you're going to a nest of, or whatever, a hive, right? You don't leave before all the bees are organized and cooperating. You don't leave before there's something along the lines of democracy. You don't leave actually, I don't know if that would be the solution, to just stay there forever, because it's, practically horrific to think about that. But the minute that the Americans left, well, not the minute, but it became really bad, right? Because the Americans were not there anymore. And so the gangs took over again. I mean, and you have this religious Sunni versus Shia bullshit that is not going to go away anytime soon. So my point is, if you're going to go in there, like they did with Germany in the past, right, with the World War II, if you're going to go in there, make sure that when you leave, things are okay, not that things get fucked up again. Supposedly, they went there to correct things. I mean, forget about the oil, forget about the lack of, weapons of mass destruction. I mean, they went there because supposedly they wanted to fix shit, and then they were like, "Well, we're just leaving."
This is the okay. I'll talk about two things there. One is when I talk about what you're addressing here is the reasons that Hitchens thought we should go are reasons I agree with. The danger level of a dictator, the instability of his regime, and just also the fact that sitting back and not affecting any part of the world. Because, the way he put it to one person that was questioning him once is he snapped at him. He goes, yes, I've heard it before. We can't go around the world saving everyone, so we shouldn't save anyone. I thought that was pretty well put. So it's just that in this particular case, I thought from the beginning that they wouldn't be able to control them. Like there was just too many deep-seated divisions there. And this is the second thing I was going to address, is that the left now acts like it's still all George Bush's fault. But Obama and his administration had a role to play in how they left things there. He, for instance, I forget his name now, the president I think it was a president they had, right, in Iraq. He was a background with Shiite, was his kind of group. When Bush was in power, he had him on 24 hours. He could call the president of the United States and talk to him anytime. When Obama came into power, he didn't have time for him anymore. So this guy felt he was left on his own. So this is what I mean. It's not just cut and dry. I mean, once Obama gets into office and the liberals over there are now playing a role in this, they need to accept some responsibility.
Okay, didn't you hear? Obama is black. He can't make mistakes. Okay,
that's right.
You are racist. By the way, he's not even black. He's mixed. Why is everyone treating the guy as a black guy?
That's just, and even he's resigned. I think. I don't think he even protests anymore.
Yeah. So, are you Canadian or American?
I'm Canadian.
Yeah. Okay. And so, what do you think about the upcoming American elections?
Oh, about there's basically four names that keep spitting around: Trudeau, Hillary, Sanders, and
Trump.
And didn't I say Trump? Who was the first one?
No.
I said? Who was the first one I said?
Trudeau.
Oh yeah, I said that. I've been talking about Trudeau too much lately. I've got it on my brain. He's like an infection.
And you know why you talk about him? Because it's 2016. That's a new answer for everything. Because it's the year that it is.
I have an amusing way of explaining to people why that's not an appropriate answer from a head of state on a major administration position that he takes. You can switch. You can use that answer for any topic. If someone was like, "Why are we rounding up the Jews and putting them in the concentration camps?" State the year. Why are we dropping nuclear bombs on this random country? State the year.
I mean, when he gave that answer, if you start analyzing the answer, is like what the answer means. It's really scary shit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like not only will I be a sexist and impose a sexist quota on on politicians, but I will do it because the era we are going through dictates that I will do it.
Right.
I don't even think that he had that level of analysis when he gave the answer, right?
No,
but
it's his mentality. Yeah, it's his mentality. Well, I have been arguing with people over the last week on Facebook like you wouldn't believe, because I've come out swinging against Trudeau, and I'm trying to give people a heads up that we've got some, a very unhappy 4 years coming if he sticks with this. Everywhere he goes, everything he talks about.
Why? But he has great hair. He has a famous last name, and it's 2016.
There are, people that were questioning me just today, and I had to lay out for them, look, they're like, what's wrong with feminism? What's wrong with feminism? And in regards to Trudeau specifically. And I said, first of all, it's an ideology that has a utopian slant to it, where that's what we're getting at with that answer. He believes that this is the coming of the age. This is clearly where we must move. The whole future is seen through this lens.
Yep. And he might be right. That's the worst part.
Well, we knew we had to go extinct at some point, so.
Oh no, don't worry. They'll still keep like 10% of us.
Men, yeah, I know.
Remember that's I don't remember the feminists that had that plan. There was like this plan of like concentration camps for males.
Yeah.
So I keep like 10% or whatever the figure is, because you keep humanity going, right? You just need the males who will reproduce. You don't need males per se. I mean, males are guilty for all the violence, all the disease, that and X, Y, and Z, right? So just keep some males separated from society, and use them sometimes for their sperm or whatever to continue the human species.
Would you be able to use the switch to turn off your video just to see if that makes the signal a little smoother?
Yeah.
Perfect.
How about now?
Yeah, well, it's fine now. Theoretically, that should make it more constant. Yeah, these discussions I get into people with them, it's almost always seems to boil down to that people who have these discussions don't like my position because they don't like conflict. My position is a conflict position. Our prime minister and his feminist ideology is crap. Oh, well, why you gotta go and say that at the table? Why you gotta go say that on Facebook?
I tend to be different in real life than here, than in, on an online environment. It's like I feel more freedom to actually express myself. While out there, if you will, it's very hard to actually express what you think without any repercussion.
Well, people get mad at me if that's what you mean. I try to know when it's not going to do any good, just going to ruffle feathers for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if the expression I use, if someone leans into a dispute with me, I don't care if that's a direct argument or if they're giving me sideways, quote, questions. If they're going to do that with me, I feel that I have then equal opportunity, shall we say, to directly address it.
I had a co-worker a couple of years ago. She was a Muslim woman who asked me, when I told her I was an atheist, she asked me what happened to me. Did I fell off a chair or something? Did I fall on my head?
Right.
And I just laughed it off, because I knew exactly what would happen if I started criticizing her religion. And, it's a choice you gotta make, right? Are you gonna pay the consequences all the time of speaking your mind or not? And I'm not claiming to be an example because, again, I self-censor myself a lot in real life, if you will.
Yeah. Well, everyone's going to have their own balance that they find.
Mm-hmm.
There are times that I really self-censor. My profession is truck driver. So I was speaking to a truck driver the other day, and he was telling me it started out with him talking to me about a charity that him and his wife are involved in, a nonprofit, where they help bring homeless people off of the street, people who don't like going to the shelters. And so it sounded really nice. And then he started talking about how it was a Christian organization and how they talked to them one-on-one on the street about salvation and stuff. And I knew I could have gotten into it with him. But instead I focused on my comments on the fact that they were feeding and clothing homeless people,
Right.
Especially since I understand some level of hypocrisy. I don't do that. So.
Mm-hmm. And, yeah, one has to admit that sometimes religion moves people to do great things. However, I always doubt if people are doing great things for other people just because of their religion or because they're authentically moral.
Right.
However, the downside of religion that I see all the time is the same one that Hitchens pointed out, which is good people may end up doing really, really fucked up stuff because of religion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Religion for a lot of people has been more than a guess. I wouldn't underestimate the power on brains that faith has. It really creates a level of certainty that evidence sometimes doesn't create for some other people. Scientists they gather evidence sometimes to back up some hypotheses of theirs, actual evidence, and they still don't get to 100% certainty level. And you got religious folks who don't have this amount of evidence at all to back up their claims, and they're pretty goddamn sure about what they believe. And in some places in the world, they would fucking kill you about it. They would tear you apart.
Yeah, what is the expression they use? Good people generally do good things, bad people generally do bad things, but to get a good person to do bad things usually requires religion.
Yeah, touche.
I don't know, the topic of feminism, often I end up treating it much like religion. I believe that black and white ideological positions like that should be treated like religion in the sense I want them separated from state. Church-state separation for their own social faith.
Milo Yiannopoulos?
Yeah.
They quoted a poll. I didn't go to the poll itself, but apparently in Britain there was a small poll taken you had to vote which would you prefer on your life, feminism or cancer. And like 70% of people chose to have cancer.
I heard him talking about that at some point. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he was on the BBC when he mentioned that, I think.
Yeah, he was on the BBC. He was interrupted all the time. He was accused of a crime, because in Britain it is a crime to incite a murder.
Yeah.
He was accused of inciting a murder of a person, and then he was not given the airtime to respond. Not only that, but the feminists who accused him of said crime didn't provide the quote that she was alleging that he has said on Twitter. So it was horrible. I mean, I don't know why the hosts can't be objective in the sense that, you don't have to opine, fine, but at least give the same airtime to both parties. So if you have, let's say, two feminists on one hand, and then Milo on the other, you should give Milo double the time that each individual feminist has. But if you take a look at the time of the timeline of the interview, the feminists had more time than Milo, both of them. I mean, individually, they each had more time than Milo to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really sad. It's actually really, really pathetic, in my opinion.
But they kept talking over him. And then the one time they started talking over him, the host made some kind of a gesture saying, he has his turn to speak. And then they started yelling at each other. He's like, I want 10 seconds of silence for everyone. And then he gave the floor to another speaker instead of him. It's like, dude, what was that all about then? Why didn't you just let the women talk over him?
Yeah. It's kind of hopeless, isn't it? But I see a ray of light in the recent resolution to the trial that had been going on about the guy who disagreed with feminists on Twitter.
Yes.
Here in Canada.
Yeah.
So that was okay, I guess. But again, it's a guy who lost 3 years of his life. Who knows if he's gonna get repaid for it if he decides to sue the stupid feminists who prosecuted him. And again, even if he does, he will again get a stain on his reputation. I mean, he's an artist, right? So reputation is a big thing for artists. And what these people do is they just stain your reputation. They threaten you with that shit. And in Canada, it's very easy to do so. Unfortunately, a lot of people agree with these feminists. So it's even when he won, he still lost. You know what I mean?
It's what I'm starting to call it is it's the old take my neighbor, just leave me be. I know we haven't talked before. My situation is I'm going through family court, so you can imagine the joys of my life. And I'm happy that I have a daughter. I love her to, no end. But the system itself has made my life a misery. Just it's unbelievable what I've been going through. And it's been dragging out for years and years. And now I was expecting this. Some of my friends that at first were like, this shouldn't be allowed. How can this be happening to you? Now when I talk about Trudeau and feminism, they're like, well, I think it's just your individual situation that blinds you. Not everyone goes through that. I'm like, thousands of men are going through what I'm going through. It's not just me. But, since you're not going through it, I guess it's easy for you to just ignore.
Yeah, and the bigger point is how many women are going through what you're going.
Right. Almost none.
You know what I mean? Because you could argue, okay, well, yes, you're going through a horrible situation, but women go through that situation as well. No, they don't.
No, and it's amazing. I even had this debate with my own lawyer, and he does work for me, in court. But we have outside of court, we've had some discussions where we clearly disagree. I think what we're seeing is direct violations of the Charter of Rights, our basic rights as men. When we come into court, it should not be male and female parents, mother and father. It should be parents, two adults. There's a total set of double standards. If she doesn't work, like as in my case, she hasn't worked these entire years. It hasn't tried to get a job or anything. It's been years. Court doesn't care. If I lost my job and didn't get one at least within a few months, that would totally condemn my any kind of possibility that I have towards getting custody.
I see.
Yeah, and these types of double standards are atrocious. There's no excuse for them.
Well, you are a male.
Yes, that's right. I do have the crime of possessing the wrong genitalia when I go into court.
I think you're white, right?
Yes, I am.
So double crime right there.
Yeah.
Are you straight?
Bi, but I don't really go around flashing it, so people won't know.
That's half a point, not 1 point there. That's half a point. Are you cisgender?
Yes, I am.
How many crimes can you commit? Come on, man.
And the half point that I got, most people wouldn't know unless they ask because I don't go around talking about it, so they're just not going to give me that point anyway. I have to wear a ribbon or a shirt.
They actually believe, I mean, the most radical feminists, I guess, but they actually do believe that people are more or less oppressed based on what they are, not on, their personal financial or life circumstances, but on what they are. So let's say, again, you're white, you're a male, you're cisgender, right?
Right. So
even if you're going through this bullshit that you're going through, you're still more privileged than a woman.
Yep.
You are, by definition, this is their dogma. There is no way around it. This is their dogma. And I am afraid that this could actually be the Prime Minister's dogma as well. It looks like it.
I think it is, yeah. And that's what I'm trying to warn people about, is that unlike other prime ministers or presidents you see around the world who, for the most part, when you see them talk about women's rights, they're talking about feminism or they're supporting feminism, or they might even call themselves a feminist from time to time. But everything this guy does, he brings feminism up. It doesn't matter if it's economics, cabinet, going for a walk, taking a piss. He's talking about feminism.
It will get him lots of votes, I guess. That's one thing. He's also pulling the immigration card now with let's just bring everyone come in. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
whatever. It's
well, I try and that's another one. I don't know how much you've gotten into discussions with people about that, but I've tried to distinguish this for people. There's a difference between immigration and mass migration. Right? There's a big difference. And if you don't know, check it out in a history book. Mass migration never is a pretty sight. There's always these massive problems with it.
Yeah, you only got to ask the Indians, the natives, you know what I mean? That's exactly what happened to them.
Yep.
So why do we think that it will work now?
Yep.
Not only that, I mean, again, going back to the native experience, the whiteys were not decidedly in war with the natives. They still wiped them out. What about bringing people in here that are actually in a mission? You know what I mean? In a mission of religious mission of, well, let's destroy their civilization for Allah.
Yeah.
I mean, that could potentially go a little bit wrong. You know what I mean? I mean, it's kind of insane.
Well, this is something that a lot of people, again, like Hitchens, but there's a number of people who've been warning that in the West, we're very ignorant of how dangerous these beliefs are. And we have this we take for granted that our society will always be as it is now. We don't we don't understand. Okay, I was just showing some pictures on our live stream today earlier about women in Afghanistan in the 50s sitting in a science lab, or pictures from Tehran in Iran. They're women in the 70s wearing completely modern fashion. And these countries now do not look anything like that. So I'm not saying we're going to look exactly like they do, but just assuming that our level, our quality of life and freedom will always remain the same is a disastrous attitude, that assumption.
I hate to go back to, how retarded the left is, but when you hear their arguments against, when you hear their arguments for immigration of this type, mass immigration, if you will, their arguments are, why are you Islamophobic? Why are you a racist? Why do you hate brown people, etc., etc.? When the point is not the color of the skin. No. And it has never been. Well, I don't know any right-winger who goes like, I don't like the Muslims because they're brown, or I don't like the Muslims because I just don't like it. I just don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't hear the right-wingers opposing, say, Chinese immigration or French immigration, or to go with my nation, for example, they are not opposing Argentinian immigration.
Right.
There is a reason why they are opposing a particular type of immigration, and it's not a race. Islam is a religion.
Yeah.
And it's a very toxic religion. And it hasn't gone through the reformation that Christianity has gone through. I mean, Christianity can be really nasty, but these guys got a grip of what they were doing for various reasons, right? But they had toned it down. You don't see Christians in mass committing genocide, especially not because of religious reasons.
Right.
That's for sure. So again, I don't know if you heard about Sam Harris.
Yes.
But one of the arguments he makes is very interesting, which is the left tends to focus on numbers of people killed. So, for example, the left criticizes U.S. Because the U.S. has killed, we know how many people the U.S. has killed throughout history. But the left likes to ignore intention. And Harris' argument is that intention is paramount in this discussion. You can't ignore the role of intention. So, for example, when you take the case of Israel and Palestine, and let's say hypothetically that you turned the tables and the Palestinians had the power that the Israelis have, and vice versa.
Yeah.
You would see a death toll of 100th the time that the number of deaths that we're seeing nowadays, because the intentions are very clearly different. Hamas has not the same intentions as Netanyahu. You know what I mean? There is a different intention, and at the end of the day, it's such an important difference. And unfortunately, the left doesn't care about it. Not only it doesn't care about it, but it also accuses you with false intention of, say, racism or discrimination of people just based on their skin, or all this nonsense.
There's also sort of a condescension that the left seems to think that we can sort of teach the Muslim world, if you want to call it that, teach the Muslim world how to be more civilized. We have this power. In the West, we didn't get to this point because someone on the outside taught us how to do it or gave us a handout. We had to learn it on our own. Any part of the world or any culture needs to develop on their own. Like, there's influence, yes, but no one has that kind of power over another group of people.
Yeah, the equation changes, unfortunately, nowadays because they can develop potentially weapons of mass destruction, right?
Yeah.
So that changes everything, because in the past you could actually wait for things to work out. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm not sure that nowadays you can have that luxury anymore.
Right. In the sense of, if we're talking about intervention, we have to bear in mind that some of their ways of thinking and their ways of life, it's important that they change. We can't just expect to keep giving them aid, giving them stuff through trade for their oil, a number of different types of ways that people think that we can reform them without putting pressure on this specific issue of your culture must reform.
Yeah, and good luck with that. Good luck with that. From sources of, when you, so again, Sam Harris doing a podcast interview with, I think he was a general commander. He was an ex-military who fought in Iraq. And this guy was very plain, very sincere, He had a lot of Iraqi acquaintances and he loved the Iraqi people. But in regards to ISIS in particular, his opinion was that the only solution is to completely and utterly destroy them. There is no other, there is no reasoning with a person with a person who is willing to do what happened in Paris, let's say. There is no reasoning. There comes a point where it's, okay, let's see who has the bigger guns. And unfortunately, we might reach that point sooner than later.
It's disaster. Well, I know one thing that doesn't help is what's going on in Europe. That's not making anything better.
Ask the Germans. They're having so much fun.
Yeah, don't you understand that they were promised that this progressive idea of multiculturalism cannot fail? It can only succeed.
Well, I mean, I do trust Merkel because she's a woman and she's a powerful, empowered woman. So vagina. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So you get into these discussions with people, and it's frustrating because, like I say, I've seen you have different debates with people. It's obvious that you put thought and you look into different matters, and your ideas evolve over time. And then you do all this work. You listen to people. You read, and then you have discussions with people who have not one lick even questioned the idea or looked into it at all, and they want to tell you how it is.
And that's a shame. I mean, okay. So I'll tell you a little bit about my own journey with the subject of abortion, for example. I was pro-life. I was a Christian in the past, so
okay.
They go hand by hand. And then I became pro-choice, if you will. And now, well, not now, but a couple of years ago, looking at the evidence, I became kind of like in the middle, if you will. I don't think that a fetus is a human, but I don't think that you're not a human until you're born either. So I would fall similar to where Christopher Hitchens actually fell in that subject, which is maybe we should consider the third trimester as a different trimester in regards to, well, there is an actual sentient being inside there now. Now, the first two trimesters, you don't even have a developed brain at all yet. So that's a very different matter, right?
Right.
But again, my thinking evolved not only once, but twice in regards to the matter. And I'm glad that it did. And again, if someone, let's say tomorrow, a Christian, I don't care, whoever, comes and gives me a good reason why I should believe that, hey, look, after, say, 1 week, there's a sentient being inside there. That would be a game changer for me again. I don't take any pride in never being proven wrong. Actually, it's kind of worrying to me if I am never proven wrong. You know what I mean? There's something going on there. I don't think for a second that everything that I believe right now is the absolute truth. And I would be glad to be, again, proven wrong once more, because that means that I'm getting closer to the truth.
Yeah, I feel very much the same. I like it when people can challenge me. I like growing. I guess what I was just getting at is that simple kind of first step that they're still standing on the first step. It's always the same beginning to it. Oh, well, we need immigrants. Okay.
Why?
It's like, exactly.
I don't understand that. Like, why do you need immigrants? Are you bringing immigrants like engineers? Are you bringing, I don't know, entrepreneurs? And are you bringing immigrants who are going to make your nation better? Or are you just bringing immigrants because you want to give handouts? If you want to if you want to do charity, what about your own people? Why don't you start there? I'm just saying, right?
If they haven't put any thought into it, and a lot of people, they ignore these subjects because they're stressful. I guess they just want to relax after work or whatever. And I understand not everyone's not like myself. I get that. But it's kind of like, if you put enough time and effort into something, it's like looking at a painting and talking about which era it's from or what school it's from. And then you turn to the person next to you and you want to have a discussion about it, and they're like, I like brown. You know, okay. I don't even know. Are you agreeing or disagreeing with me? Really? How do we have this discussion? You know, but with feminism, the number one thing is I'm a feminist, or someone I know is a feminist, and they're not like that. Like that's great for you. That's very good.
Yeah. I will tell you what I do agree with feminists on, and you'll be surprised, and then I'll explain why.
Okay?
You know how, let's say, this bitch, Anita Sarkeesian, said that, everything is racist, everything is sexist, or everyone, let's say, everyone is racist, everyone is sexist, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when she said that shit?
Yep.
All right. I agree with her, but not for the reasons that she poses. I think, for example, not everyone, but I think a big chunk of people are sexist And all the proof I need is to point you to, again, the American election going on now and why people will vote for Hillary. They will vote for her because they are sexists, because they think that automatically a woman automatically is better than a man at doing X, Y, or Z.
Right.
By the same token, these people who are trying to defend immigration for the sake of immigration, and they point to like, okay, we need more brown people, let's say, or we need more yellow people or more orange people or purple, regardless of the color, they are engaging in that bias as well. They are engaging in that racism. And when I talk about racism, I don't mean like people persecuting people. I just mean people having preferences for this or that race based on, well, I like that color better, or I want more of that color or less of that color. I mean, it's insane to me.
Yeah.
And so in a way, I kind of agree with the feminists, but not particularly because of the reasons that they are thinking that I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me what you think of this. This has to do with language, and I thought about this some time ago in a couple of discussions I had. So I have an issue with the term feminism from the get-go, and here's my thinking on this. It's the easiest way to explain it. When I say that someone is a racist, usually what people think of is somebody who's white who hates black people. But that's not actually what it means. What it means is that this person sees way too much of life through the lens of race. That he meets someone, he sees their race first and foremost, or she does, right? And this is a problem because we know how destructive this limited way of seeing people goes, right? It always goes into the tendency of discrimination and persecution, things like that. Feminism, I have the same problem with. It's about seeing everything through the lens of sex from the slant of the feminine being better than or more important than the masculine. I think it's an imbalanced way of seeing things socially or individually.
Yeah. They also play the same cards as the people from, like, let's say, Black Lives Matter type of deal.
Yep.
Which is, okay, demographic X has been more oppressed throughout history than demographic Y. So now, to correct for that historical oppression, we should grant privileges to X that Y doesn't have.
Yeah.
Again, it's racism, or in the case of feminism, it's sexism.
Yeah.
Which is very ironic because the whole point of feminism is to fight sexism.
The problem of financial abortion, the right to have a financial abortion for a guy, is not even discussed. The right for a guy to say, okay, if you want to go ahead and have this kid, go ahead. I'm not going to be the father. That's not even being discussed anywhere, seriously. So even in regards to missing rights, there is inequality right now. I see an inequality in regards to how much we discuss about some issues that men go through, like custody battles, how men are screwed over and over, financial abortion, how men don't even have the right to do that or to claim that, and the draft, for example, that's another issue that is going on in several countries that people don't take into account. And also, I would argue that society in general reacts very differently to catastrophes that include men, with regards to catastrophes that include women, right? I mean, when a group of women, or when one individual woman is harmed, for the most part, you can notice outrage throughout society, and that's fine. But it's not the same case when things happen to guys, right?
Yeah, you go try to convince them of these things, right?
It's that attitude of, they say, oh, we hate that behavior, but really in their hearts, they envy the people who get to do it.
Now, I've heard that America in general is not feminist. So for example, most women don't consider themselves feminist.
Right.
But at the same time, Hillary has such a big chance of becoming the next president because she's a woman. I mean, there's no way around it. Well, yeah, the last name as well, like Clinton helps, right?
Yeah.
But if she was a man, I don't know if she would have the same chances against, say, Trump or whoever wins on the other side. So women don't call themselves a feminist, but by and large, the women voting for Hillary are voting for her based on her gender. So what about that? Is that not being in a way, a feminist?
Well, that is an interesting perspective, especially when she was running in contention with Obama before he got in. that on the left, at least, this was the huge discussion. Like, everyone knew what the contention was between these two. Do we vote for a woman as our primary consideration, or a black person as our primary consideration? And really, Hillary, of course, is just this tragic. She's a tragedy. Just looking at how like she behaves with, I don't know, how would you put it? Flip-flopping rather than having principles.
Yeah, she wants to win.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
She'll say whatever it takes.
Yeah. If I'm not incorrect, I think she was opposed to gay marriage, and then she flip-flopped that.
Yep.
I don't know her position on drugs. Do you know her position on drugs?
Other than it seems like maybe she's on them, or.
Well, she wouldn't be the first politician opposed to drugs who does drugs, right? But
yeah. Well, I'm sure it's changed, whatever it is. What was the other one? Oh, Iraq. Like at first she voted to attack Iraq, and then later on she was against it, saying the war was terrible.
And I love how she played the female card with the whole, she attacks Trump, right?
Yep.
And she knows that will provoke Trump to respond to her, because Trump is not, he's not going to shut up. If we know something about Trump, is that he won't shut up.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. So he responds to her on the same level, if you will, of with the same level of aggression. But he's a sexist because he attacked a woman.
Yeah.
And that's what she is actually going with. He's trying to portray the guy as a sexist.
I think this is why Trump is succeeding so much in the polls. Isn't so much that Trump himself is a man of, it's not his virtue. It's two things. Well, one is obviously people are angry with the establishment and they feel like they would like to kick it in the teeth. And that's sort of what he's doing. But the other thing is that with all of this, like, over the top liberal progressive stuff, and that he doesn't participate in that and he just tells them off, I think that a lot of people are responding to that.
Yeah, I think so too. And one thing I liked about the guy, and it could be, for all I care, it could be Bernie Sanders. I don't care the name. But I like that someone put on the table issues that no one was discussing because they were taboo.
Yeah.
The Muslim immigration issue, that's an issue.
Yep.
The Mexican immigration for the Americans, it's an issue. But they just don't want to talk about it. Well, this guy talks about it. I mean, you can hate Trump, but at the end of the day, you got to admit that Trump brings things to the table that a typical politician, wouldn't.
Right.
And that's very cool. That's very cool in my opinion.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that I think that he would be a good president, but I do appreciate, like you say, the elements he's bringing that would not otherwise be there.
And I heard a theory that is very interesting, which is Trump is actually expecting, if you will, like, all he wants is for something to take place in America. So let's say that there's a new terrorist attack or whatever, that would help Trump, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So his bet against Hillary is like, okay, Hillary is running her campaign with her vagina, right? Okay, what are my cards here? My cards here are, I'm going to oppose, let's say, Muslims, or I'm going to oppose Mexicans, and then I'm going to show Americans how bad it can get when something happens. So let's say if there's I don't think there will be anytime soon, but if there was a cartel war, or if there was a big terrorist attack like 9/11, or maybe not that big, but big enough, Trump is counting on that. And that would help him because he's the only one who has been talking about these issues so far. So it's a bet, it's a long bet, but it could work for him.
Yeah. Man, a lot of people they keep repeating Trump can never be president. I'm not saying that anymore. He's got these huge poll numbers that are unbelievably high. I hope he's not, but I'm also not rooting for anyone else. So
yeah, I mean, the only one that I actually liked was Ron Paul, but he's never going to win. So I think whoever that's the thing. If I have to choose, I hate the image of Hillary being president. I really do, man.
Yeah.
And Bernie Sanders would just be terrible too.
And this interesting thing with Bernie Sanders, he got, I guess, some flack because he did not believe that we should be paying reparations for, now was it that all white people now should be taxed and give money to black people, I think was the idea. Either that or Native Americans, but I think it was black people. And he didn't think that this was a constructive way to do it. So they got angry at him. And so I put the link on Facebook and I said, reparations, paying for the sins of your father is not socialist, because they always say he's a socialist. It's Old Testament.
Oh my God. Yeah, I hate to see anyone actually with power out of these three people. But I would have to go with Trump out of the three, I guess, because he's the closest to not sucking, which is really sad.
This is the state we've fallen to.
It's like the best of the worst.
Yeah.
Oh, it's sad. It's sad. He would still be better than Justin Trudeau, in my opinion, though.
Yeah.
Just give him time. Just give Justin Trudeau time and see where this country goes to. I hope I'm wrong because I am actually living here. But I think this guy is going to be terrible for Canada.
A disaster. Well, I can tell you for having gone through the system, having connected with a lot of people who've gone through the system, both in Canada, the United States, Western nations, that the discrimination against men is something that men don't complain about. We don't sit around. I don't know what this is about. Like, men just don't go around going, "Oh my goodness, the prisons are filled with almost all men." Army, almost all the people going into the army and getting shot and blown up are almost all men. You know, we don't tend to do this, but for some reason, any little area where men are more represented than women in anything, and now we hear screaming about it.
Well, unless it's truck driving, like what you do. Unless it's coal mining.
Yep.
I mean, you never hear feminists complaining about those positions. I wonder why.
Nope. And I've tried pointing this out to people. Like, there's the idea that I think it's like 90% in some places of elementary school teachers are now female. In a lot of places, it's over 70% of the time where women get the custody in custody battles over children. It's just the numbers are so skewed. It's so many areas, and the idea that men have it easy is just laughable when you look into it.
I'm studying business administration, and in the first year at school, in my class, we all had like a general orientation, if you will, right? So, and it was similar numbers of females and males in my class. Now, in year 2, you have to choose an orientation that you will take in business. Mostly males chose accounting and finance, and women chose, for the most part, HR. Now, there was no societal pressure for females to choose HR, but they still do.
Yeah. Oh, this is considered heresy to say that.
I'm just quoting statistics.
Yeah.
This is not even my opinion. They actually chose HR for the most part. And accounting in particular has almost no females. Finance, almost no females. You got them, most of them in HR. Some of them went to marketing and management. But for the most part, they went to HR. And surprise, surprise, I discovered that HR is by far, by and large, the easiest orientation to take in business.
Yeah.
Again, no one is preventing females from choosing something that has more to do with mathematics, but they are choosing freely to go to something that has more to do with people.
Yes.
So personally, I see nothing wrong with that at all, but feminists do. So when you think about it, I'm more in favor of women's choices than feminists.
Yeah, absolutely. Christina Hoff Sommers talks about this a lot.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've told people, some of my liberal friends, sometimes I get into these debates over STEM, right? Engineering is a good example. And I've said, okay, look, do you know what country on this planet has achieved 50%, at least with the up and coming engineers that are coming out of school right now, male and female? And they're always like guessing different countries. No, there's no Western country. It's China. And the way China did this was they decided what programs these people would go into, and they decided for them.
I see.
Yeah, it was a top-down approach. So this is the conflict for feminists. They like to talk about women having more choice and freedom. But then if the statistics don't plan out that way, well, then clearly something needs to be done about this, because this is not right.
They just can't accept that females, by and large, make their own choices already, like, can make whatever choice they want. They have more incentives to go towards areas like the STEM areas. They will get more grants and more scholarships and so forth than males.
Yeah.
And they still don't. And it's like, oh, why? Why are they so oppressed that they are afraid to go into these fields? And when they say that, it's such a slap.
Yeah.
Reality's face that it's to me it's laughable, but a lot of people take them seriously, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, for my situation, when we found we were going to have a child, my now ex-wife and I, She was always a rah women's equality, liberation type of girl. I never had a problem with it. I was fine with that. But she surprised me soon after she found out she was pregnant. She asked me if I would mind if she was a stay-at-home mom. And it surprised me, but I supported it. And I worked my ass off, and of course, it ended up all being counted against me when we got to family court. And I was in trouble, right? Because she hadn't been working and I had, so I obviously am a terrible person. But
I have argued in the past, in some of my past videos, for the choice of men to have a financial abortion. In other words, yes, it's the woman's body. She has the right to choose if she wants a kid or not.
Yes.
The state should provide the option to have an abortion, yes. But if she doesn't want to take that choice, wants to have the kid, and the father doesn't want to have a kid,
yep.
Why couldn't he opt out?
Exactly. It took me a long time to come around to seeing it that way.
Well, and what I got from feminists is like, he made the choice to go to bed with her. Okay. But you don't make that standard for women.
Right, exactly.
And then they turn it around and go like, because it's her body. I mean, it's such a dogma, man.
Well, it's a man's body that he's got to go out and work all the time and give all of his money to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It determines your life for you, which includes your body.
Yeah, and then they say, you should have worn a condom. First of all, condoms are not perfect. And second, they oppose the development of the male pill. So what's up with that? Isn't that another one of the hundreds of contradictions that these people have?
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Well, it's about power. It's kind of like how many feminists will describe rape. It's not about the sex, it's about the power. Well, it's like, I think you guys are projecting a little bit.
Well, a lot of feminists agree with the whole idea of institutional racism, which at the same time prevents the idea of reverse racism, right? So they go like, if you're white and someone's racist against you, they can't be racist against you because you are the oppressor by definition, and they don't have the power that you do. So they can resent you, but they will never be racist because racism only comes from a place of power and privilege.
In a sense, even if you look at it from the argument that they're making, the only conclusion that you can have is that white people are superior, right? When you're living in a society where we're striving for equality and the law reflects, equal opportunity and protection under the law, and we're talking about men and women have equal opportunities of choice now, then to continue to say that white people can't be, other people can't be racist, only white people can. Well, is that because white people are like indestructible super beings? They make it sound like we're 10 feet tall and we can shoot I-beams out or something.
Yeah. And also not only that, but they, like every measure that they quote to justify the claim that we are privileged, when you apply those same standards to Asians, you find out that Asians are more, quote, privileged than whites.
Yeah.
They do better at tests. They earn more money. They live better lives in general, better lifestyles. They earn more wealth and at a quicker rate. So I guess by their own token, that Asians are oppressing us. So we can't be racist against Asians. That's stupid.
Well, this is why I use the term humanist, and it drives them bananas when you do. Because I've had people say, well, after discussing issues of equality with you, I think that you should call yourself a feminist. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I will call myself a humanist because I judge people based on their quality of being a human. Like, I can see the distinctions of color or of sex, orientation, I guess, in certain circumstances. But their value comes down to the fact that they're human. This is why I think the civil rights continues to be so profound in its influence to this day, whereas something like Black Power did not have the same impact, is because one is premised on we care about these people not because they're black, but because they're human, and it happens to be these humans who are black who are being oppressed or being mistreated. But it extends, therefore, from the same principle into any group of people, regardless of the differences we're talking about. Whereas when you just get angry and threaten people, specifically with a equally racist connotation, it's self-defeating.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I don't know if you've observed the behavior of most of the Black Lives Matter individuals.
Yes.
But they tend to be a little bit racist.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, I can't find another word for it. It's like, if you're white, you're the devil. Okay, that's kind of racist.
Yeah. Well, also, I've known people who've gone to China. One of my ex-girlfriends in particular, she went there for a couple of years to teach, and she found out eventually what they were calling her in Chinese was white devil. Right? She was the only white person that a lot of them had ever seen in their area. And so that's an example of the human element to this when we talk about discrimination or bigotry. It's not white people who are bigots. It's human beings that, if you don't become aware of this sort of part of your nature, take control of it, it's a human quality. It's not a white person quality.
Right. Okay. We seem to be agreeing on everything so far. So I'm gonna bet that we might disagree on the next subject, so I'll bring it up.
Sure.
Transsexual people.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's
go.
Well, my position on this has changed a little bit. I really didn't put a lot of thought into it until about the last year, but it's actually been tied in a lot to the talks about progressives, because a lot of people in the trans community have lined up on Gamergate's side. I don't know if you followed that at all.
Gamergate? Yes, I do.
Yeah, so that was the first time I really started putting a lot of thought into it. So my position on it is, I simply respect the fact that this is a choice that they're going to make that makes them happy. I don't really feel the need to understand it intrinsically. You know what I mean? I can treat them like anybody else and respect their choice. However, I also think it's an important caveat to note that from what I've seen, there is a higher percentage of people who identify as trans with very serious psychological issues. And I don't think it serves anyone to ignore that. I don't think we should, place it onto everyone, but I think we should be aware of it.
Right. And the thing is, okay, let's go with that line of reasoning. So you respect a person, a person who says, I'm a woman or a man, even though they were born with the genitalia of the opposite gender that they're mentioning.
Right. Yep.
But you go to the actual, I always go to the bathroom issue, right? Because the public bathroom is the main issue that is in the discussion today nowadays, because it's like, okay, will you allow transgender people to go to the bathroom of their choice? And discount all the degenerates that will like just pretend to be transsexual in order to get a peek at, let's say I'm a guy and I claim to be a woman, and then I go to, females' bathrooms to just, creep on them.
Yep.
Even if no one did that. What about the people who don't agree with the transgender people? In other words, what about the people who think, you're born with a penis, you're a male, you're born with a vagina, you're a female. It's actually, your chromosomes, right? What about those people? Don't they have the right to be respected and be left alone in their bathroom that they always use with the gender, the class of gender that they want to share the bathroom with?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big one for me. Another big one for me, and this one is more personal for me, is let's say that tomorrow you tell me you're a woman.
Yeah.
I will respect that as much as exactly in the same level as if you told me that you are a Christian. In other words, I respect your right to believe that you are a woman, but I don't believe you're a woman for a second. And it's as much your right to say you're a woman as my right to say you're fucking insane. And if you want to call me a hateful person for pointing it out, then I would argue that, well, maybe I offended you. Like, let's say we just met, right? And I said something along those lines.
Yeah.
And I would be like, yeah, I didn't mean to offend you. I was just expressing my opinion, but if you want, I can just drop the subject or we can change the subject. But if you were like a personal friend of mine or a family member, whatever, yeah, I have the right to tell you that because I care about you. And I really believe that if 99% of your genome is codified as a male, then chances are you're a male, even if you feel that you're not.
Well,
maybe that's a feeling you have, not reality.
I would definitely say that part of what I was getting at there is that there is serious debate within psychology and psychiatry, particularly about, with a lot of respected psychiatrists, whether, most specifically, gender reassignment surgery is hotly debated. However, just the idea of whether, are we helping someone by encouraging the thought of seeing themselves as the opposite sex or gender than they were born? Are we a part of the problem, or are we helping with being part of the solution? And I think that it's important that we keep those discussions open rather than shaming them into silence, because I don't want to be someone who hurts people in the sense that homosexuals, for instance, were treated like shit for so many years. But I also don't want to hurt people the other way by saying I want to be part of this silencing campaign that no one can debate this. And then years down the road, the science finally starts coming out that I was wrong.
Right.
And I think it's probably not a black and white subject. It's like I say, there's probably a variety of people with different reasons for behaving the way that they do. And, it's really a complicated one.
It is complicated because we're dealing with not only people's feelings, but people's sense of identity.
Yes.
Which is such a strong feeling in particular, right?
Yep.
However, at the end of the day, it's still a feeling. And I don't want to hurt people either, but okay, so how do you manage the truth if the truth hurts, right? That's a big point nowadays, not only with the transgender issue, but every issue we have been discussing so far. I would argue that you always have to measure the line between, do I tell the truth or do I reserve my right to, not get in trouble for what I say?
Yeah.
When you take a look at situations in which transgender people are told that, no, you're not, a woman or a man, you're actually born in the body that you were born, so you're either a man or a woman or whatever, they respond very violently, and I completely understand why they feel the way they feel, but at the same time, I also understand why jihadists feel the way they feel.
Yeah,
yes. I mean, people have strong feelings, and subjects are polemic because of that same reason, because of that very reason.
Here's another difficulty I have. I try to remember on serious issues, at least, to go back to what I call principles, which are things that they flow through an entire set of subjects. And the difficulty is when you find yourself, in conflict on your principles, then there's probably something you haven't thought through, right?
Right.
So in this case, yes, okay, let's start with the position we want to accept people as they present themselves. They say that they're the other gender than they were born. Okay, so now here's the problem, and I think it's a legitimate one that needs discussing. Let's say someone comes up to you and says that they are a unicorn born into the wrong body, because these people literally exist, right? Where on principle where do we start drawing the line? Is it
you already have people like that on the internet, do you know?
What's that?
Do you know that there's already people like that on the internet?
Yes, that's what I mean. These people really do exist. It's not just
other kin, they call themselves.
Yeah. And okay, so a lot of people in the trans community would turn around and go, you people are, you're screwed in the head, right? Well, okay, so where do we, that's a difficult question. Okay, so where are we drawing this line? How do we make these distinctions? Because people in the mental health field, it's bad practice to just arbitrarily go around and decide, this person who believes that their beliefs are not attached to the medical science of who they are is real. But this other person who believes that's not attached to the medical science of who they are is not real. Because this one I think sounds good and this one doesn't.
Right. And it's such a hot issue. Like it's such a hard issue even for family members. I mean, can you imagine being part of the Kardashians and having to deal with the guy who turned into a woman kind of thing? Yeah. I mean, one of the daughters, I think, didn't talk to him for a while the others like completely accepted it. I was kind of surprised by that because, again, I put myself in my own position with my own family. Let's say my partner, she comes to me and tells me tomorrow, you know what? I've changed a little detail about myself. I consider myself a guy now. You still love me, right? I mean, it's kind of,
Yeah, it's a huge deal.
But again, it would be the same deal for me if she came to me and told me, I'm becoming a Muslim. Well, okay, you're becoming a Muslim. You feel Allah or whatever. Tell me the reasons why you feel this way, because I think it's insane. By the same token, I would tell her, tell me the reasons why you feel you're a male, because I think it's insane. But it's not in the pursuit of hurting. I couldn't care less about hurting people. I couldn't care less how they feel about facts. I just want to discover what are the facts of the situation. If I'm insane and if I'm completely dead wrong on this issue of transgenderism or whatever issue, well, I want to find out. And if they are wrong, I think it's in their own benefit to find out as well.
Right? Like, what is the difference between thinking that the world is good when the world isn't good, and the world being good. Well, the difference is that you'd rather know what the world really is. It brings me back to the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know if you remember it, but in The Wolf of Wall Street, one of the famous speeches that Leo DiCaprio makes, and I don't know if you watched the movie, but it's really interesting. He says, I was poor and I was rich, and every single day I would choose rich over poor. In a similar fashion, I would argue, one could be deluded and happy and see things for what they really are, and maybe be a little bit less happy or a little bit less content with the same situation and apply higher standards. And if you gave the choice to any of the people who have discovered the truth, or most people who have discovered the truth, they would choose to know what they know, even though they felt happier in the past. I made this point in the past to you, and I make it again. If you could fool me into being happy, or tell me the truth and make me sad, I would be kind of, compelled to choose the latter, because I'd rather have the truth other than the happiness itself.
And I'm always open to the idea that as science moves along, they'll be able to make these distinctions a lot more easily with like medical discernment of some kind that I personally am not qualified in. The best that I can do is try to let's put it this way: I try to distinguish antisocial behavior like anger or wrath or paranoia from somebody who doesn't identify as the same gender, because I don't see any reason for me to get into that with them. You know what I mean? Like for instance, I've run into a truck driver who is transgender, and to be completely honest, I don't know if it was a woman that was becoming a man or the other way around.
Right.
So I didn't ask any questions. I just talked to this person, and they never told me their name. So even now, I'm not using the pronoun because I have no idea what was going on. But I didn't need to, and they discussed it a little bit with me on one topic, and we had no problem. But I didn't see them again because apparently the next day, with one of the receivers that runs the place we're at, they started freaking out and screaming and swearing and threatening the person. So this would be the distinction, right? I wouldn't judge the person because they identify as the other gender. I would judge them from their behavior, though. You understand what I mean? Like the distinction there?
Yes, you're judging behavior instead of self-definitions.
Right. But again, I do recognize, like, I personally, I don't know how qualified it is to go, well, if you believe you are not the way you were born, sex and gender is okay. Species is not. Yeah. Okay, it seems arbitrary if you really think about it.
Well, I actually draw a line even closer to myself. I think there are lines to be drawn, right? So you're born in a male body. It used to be the definition that, well, you're a male. You're born in a female body, you're a female.
Yeah.
And we didn't have this issue, across history, across all our history. This is something that has risen in the 20th century. So my gut feeling, I can't prove it, but my gut feeling is that this is a new type of identity crisis.
It might be.
It might be, right? And so someone is going through an identity crisis. Is the best way to help them to pretend that you agree with them, to ignore them, or to confront them? Well, that's the question.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like, I can think so many examples. Like if someone came to me and told me, I have, let's say, a person with one arm, right? A person lost their arm, and they come to me and go like, oh, I love my two arms because they are so strong, but I like my left arm better than my right arm. What do you think? And I see that he's lacking his left arm. I know it's a preposterous example, but it's really the same situation if you think about it. It's like, okay, so do I tell them that, no, sorry, actually you have one arm? Or do I go along and tell them like, yeah, I think your left arm is actually bigger than your right arm? Or do I tell them, look, I don't want to talk about it? What the fuck do I do? Well, I think I should pursue the truth. Yeah. And they should as well. And so, if they ask me my opinion, I'll let them know exactly what I think. And if they don't like it, well, too bad.
Well, like I say, there's a whole range of people who fit into the term trans, and there's been a couple people online that I've noticed who mock progressives for the idea that if you use the wrong pronoun, it's traumatic for people, and they'll mock this on Facebook or Twitter. So I think that there are some people who obviously are just more easygoing about it. It doesn't bother them that people want to question or debate it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean, exactly.
They can separate that from personal disrespect or loss of freedom.
All right. So is there anything else you would like to discuss, like in particular subject? Because I don't even think we disagree so much on this one.
No, not as much as you might have thought, huh?
Yeah.
I know that this is the first time I really talked about my views on the show when it comes to trans issues, and I know some people will not like it, but we can't agree on everything, people.
Yeah, it's actually kind of, it would be boring if everyone agreed with everyone on everything. So, yeah, it's good discussions. It's good to discuss different ideas and disagree sometimes.
Well, if
something to gain by that. Right?
If you were living in the States, we could discuss maybe gun issues. That's often a divider.
All right. Well, I do think that let's say I'm in my house and a burglar comes in and I lock myself up in the bathroom or whatever, and I call 911. Now I have to wait, in the best case scenario, 5 minutes, and within those 5 minutes, anything could happen. And I am unarmed and the burglar is armed. This is only and just only because I don't have a gun and I'm not trained in using arms. And possibly the government doesn't allow me to own a gun. But if the government allows me to own a gun and then I don't train and I don't buy a gun and I don't, know how to use a gun, well, that's my own responsibility. But what I always see here is people who are responsible, lawful citizens being punished, if you will, for the misbehavior of citizens who don't. So we could make the analogy with cars, right? Like, do I have the right to own a car and use it for my own preferred, legal usage? Or the fact that some people drive like shit and might even run over people and provoke accidents? Does that fact should limit my freedom, my personal individual freedom? Well, that's the same position I take with guns, or with any tools, by the way, any tools, not only guns. Why shouldn't we have the right to own a tool just because some other people fuck up that tool? Well, it's hard, right? I mean, we can't go. I know exactly that if we go all the way with my line of reasoning, we get to, for example, nuclear weapons, right? So do I have the right to own a nuclear weapon? Because, well, I understand that the risk is so much in that case.
Right.
Such high risk that then the risk itself would trump the freedom argument, because will I risk the lives of everyone around me due to my freedom without consulting them, just owning an atomic bomb or whatever? You know what I mean? But hey, I understand that argument and I agree with that argument, but I don't agree with the whole, you shouldn't even own a normal weapon, because what if your child grabs it and whatever, no. That doesn't run through with me, because it's like, even though I'm not interested personally in owning a weapon, I recognize the right of people who are to defend themselves, or to hunt with weapons, or to just go to a shooting range and use their own weapons for fun. Why shouldn't they have that right? They should. That's my opinion.
I'm gonna when Michael Shermer's on the show, he's said that he's gonna be on in the not too distant future. You know who he is?
Yes.
He changed his position from pro-gun to gun restrictions of some sort on guns. I'm going to ask him about that. I know he's very much a details person with statistics.
Yes.
From what I remember of his discussion, he takes the approach of doing the statistics, saying the increase on deaths, the amount of accidental killings, the increase of kind of like an arms race between organized crime or just criminals in general and law enforcement and the public. My own take on this is a little different, and I've never heard anyone saying this, like using this line of thought. So it doesn't just apply to guns. When I look at society, I look at the old specialization model with history. Basically, the more organized society becomes, the more you see people that are specialized in it, and this is a sign of progress or increased development. So you start out with everybody being a farmer, everybody being a fighter, a hunter, everyone doing kind of a little bit of everything as best they can. And one of the areas I've seen that successful civilizations, the very first things that most of them do is they create a professional military class or warrior class. I don't think that it's, I've been in the States, I'd say over the last 10 years, about 70% of my time was spent there. The fact that they have guns, I think, is tied directly into the fact that they don't trust each other in the United States, which is interesting because their name is United. But they have a deep-seated distrust of their neighbor. And in countries like Canada, I think it's a sign of progress that we don't all feel the need to wear a sword at our side, so to speak. That's just my perspective. I think that it's one of many possible personal freedoms to argue about. But at some point, there are a few I would say are inarguable in the sense of whenever you get rid of them, civilization starts to regress very quickly. For instance, freedom of speech, and equality before the law without regard to different demographic elements of yourself. But for instance, you get rid of freedom of speech, then you have a cascading failure effect. You get rid of weapons, it seems to me, it does not seem like it's on the same level. It's much more attributed as to what you mean by self-defense and what kind of environment you're creating for the requirements for that sort of what's considered reasonable degrees.
I hear you.
Yeah, that's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I heard a couple of very good arguments in defense of the usage of guns, which is, one is the argument of, okay, can you really ban guns completely? No, but if you try, the people who would keep the guns are, well, the wrong people. Either the police, who are always or most of the times ineffective, or the criminals, who will get them in the black market. That's one argument. Because when you disarm people effectively, you're disarming the innocent people. You're not disarming the criminals. Well, until they commit a crime, they're innocent, right? So by definition, even if you're disarming someone who was gonna commit a crime, by definition, you're still disarming an innocent person. And what about the people who were not gonna commit crimes, who were gonna defend themselves with those weapons? Well, you disarm them now. And the second argument is freedom of speech to a certain degree. I don't know which degree, but to a certain degree depends on the freedom to be armed. In the sense of, if a government becomes tyrannical, and it has happened in the past, and it could happen again, and just because we're in the West and we're in North America doesn't mean that it would never happen, right?
Yeah.
Could be anyone. Could be Trump, for all we know. Maybe Trump will go insane and just do things that people wouldn't accept, but if they are disarmed, they have nothing to resist with. Or it could be Bernie Sanders, or it could be anyone. It doesn't matter who, but my point is, the way to defend the freedom of speech with people, ultimately, when shit hits the fan, if you will, is with force. I mean, when the time for words is over, force will decide.
But this is true. But if you look at a situation, for instance, and many are like this, like in Syria, the population there was not like they were unarmed. There were many weapons provided to them, and all it did was turn them into a big shit pile. I think that the idea that if Americans were, for instance, they felt obligated and they rose up, I think mostly Americans would be shooting each other rather than facing off against tanks, so to speak.
No. But that's the thing. The guns themselves might not work in the sense of, yeah, it could be a shitstorm. It could turn out to be completely bloody. But most likely, if the citizenship is armed, the government will be more cautious in the way that it's approaching things. So it's harder for a government to become tyrannical when the government knows that its population will resist.
I guess where we're differing there is I think that the freedom of speech would be a far more effective resistance for people that are. This is what they say with liberty: is the price for liberty is eternal vigilance. I think a lot of people that I met in the States think that means eternal vigilance, like you have a gun all the time and you're ready to use it on the government. I think what it means is being educated, being aware, being prepared to forward your own ideas and defend not just your own rights, but understand that those rights are attached to everyone else having those rights.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but you know what's interesting and very happy about this topic is we found one that we have some disagreement on.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's okay. Yeah. And but I go by, in this case, for example, I go not only by the numbers of people dead or crimes committed and accidents and whatnot. I like to go back to the individual. and individuals, if you will.
Yeah.
Do individuals have the right to defend themselves? And do they have the right to defend themselves in particular against a tyrannical government? And in certain cases, against other individuals or gangs of individuals who want to impose things that they wouldn't accept otherwise.
What's your thought on this element of it? Some people think that citizens should have to earn the right to have a gun through some type of service, whether that's police, some type of military service, something like that, or at least go through a certain kind of a club that would, like a gun club that would train them how to properly take care of everything.
Well, the latter is closer to what I think. I think you should continually earn the right, let's say annually, for example, to keep your guns. So, for example, to get a gun, you gotta get trained. That's out of the question. And then to keep your guns, you gotta, let's say, show proficiency, maybe yearly, let's say. I think that's a decent amount of, a decent period, like once a year, take a test and demonstrate that you are still capable and trained in the use of your tool.
Yeah. Well, like I say, when I'm in the States, it's really an argument that I'll have the debate to a certain extent if they want to, but I really don't get into it too deeply because they see it as an inarguable central right over there.
Right.
I know I've even talked to a couple of state troopers about whether they agreed with concealed weapons, like whether they think it's a good idea that people should be able to get a license to have a hidden weapon on them. And both of the cops I talked to were right away, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking, like, if anyone in this community is likely to run into an incident where you get shot by someone who pulls a gun out that you didn't see, is a cop.
Yeah, well, I actually do agree with concealed guns, actually. Because so again, I go back to my own experience, and you can go back to yours. The only situation in which someone that is a decent person would take out a gun and shoot someone else, well, it would be for self-defense. And then you gotta go back to the basic question. Do people have the right to self-defense?
Well, what I would say there is that most murders that are committed are done by people who don't repeat. There are people who do repeated murders, but most people who do commit murders do it in a heat of passion. And if you're carrying around guns with you, odds are it's going to be a murder, not an assault.
Yep. And it doesn't worry. No, I'm not going to deny that. And it doesn't worry me for a bit. Because again, this is the whole argument about cars again. You have a car with you, right?
Yep.
Most car accidents, like the really bad ones, if you have them in your life, it's gonna be once or twice. It's not gonna be like every time you go out, you have a major crash. So, but indeed, every time you go out with your car, there is a potential for said crash.
Yes.
But we can't take the right away from you to use your tool.
Well, after driving as long as I have, you can probably imagine why. I wish they would take that right away from about a quarter of the population right off the bat.
Well, here in Canada, we should take that right away from 90% of the population.
I am amazed. Most people, I don't think they even bother to learn the rules. I don't know how they get their license.
I actually have a theory. It's called the green theory.
What's that?
It has it has the number 100 printed on it, and you give it to the driving instructor.
That's right.
Yeah, no, actually, I heard that there's a lot of driving on with the whole driving instruction, the driving tests.
Well, they privatize it. I'm not sure what province you're in, but here in Ontario, they privatize the whole system, and it's just become more expensive. Every year, it just goes up the price.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that counts as bribing. I don't know if you have money afterwards to bribe these people, just paying the basic stuff. Okay, so now I was driving so you have to renew your license every 5 years, is it?
That I don't know.
So I was driving actually for about 5.5 years before I had to do a full retest because the time was so close to when I got my AZ. And anyways, so the point is, I go in for my license, and I have been lecturing people on the fact that they don't know the law. Ever since being a truck driver, it's kind of a thing. When people are talking to me about how they drive, and I hear them talking, I will correct them.
Right.
And I took the test, and out of a possible score of like 140, I got 2 wrong. And at least one of them had changed since I became a truck driver. It was something about school buses. And so now I feel I am fully qualified to continue lecturing people. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good enough score.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good enough. That's for sure. So,
my pet peeve is when people when I ask them what the lanes are called on the expressway, you've got, say, three lanes going each way. You've got the right lane, the middle lane, and the left lane. And they will call the furthest left lane, the inside lane, the passing lane. And when I say which one's the cruising lane, they usually figure it's the middle lane, because people think of the right lane as the in and out lane.
Oh, really?
Yes. And it's like, no, the right lane is the cruising lane. And every lane to your left from there is another passing lane for the lane on the right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. But yeah, people are not aware of the rules, and they're not aware of how to drive properly. I observe it all the time, and they just don't care.
Well, and like I say, the equivalent with guns there, I feel much more comfortable around someone who, like I say, has grown up or is part of a hunting club, and they have, like the example I use is if they accidentally, while they're talking, wave their gun near someone's legs, and someone will notice that, and it's a mark of shame. What are you doing? Are you out of your mind?
Yeah, I'm not around people that are armed, so I can't talk from personal experience, but I still, from principle, believe that people have the right to do whatever they want as long as they are not considered criminals, right?
Or
especially they have the right to defend themselves against criminals.
Or unless they're white men. So
well, we don't consider white people anymore, right? So they don't count.
Well, I've had you for like an hour and a half, so I should let you go. But I really appreciate it. I thought this was a great talk. I really enjoyed meeting it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, Dragon, and it was a great talk. Thanks for having me.
Do you want to tell people where to find you?
Yeah, they can find me at it's my YouTube channel is called Fede A, so it will be FEDE and then a space and just an A, so it will be FEDE space A.
Yeah, I recommend checking it out. I'm going to put a link in the show notes as well to your YouTube channel.
Just because we have chiseled abs and stunning features, it doesn't mean that we too can't not die in a freak gasoline fight accident.